Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar about NAV Events presented by Innovia's very own Bradley Franz. Now, I know we want to get started quickly. Just a couple pieces of housekeeping here. Number one, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into that question box. I will get them called out and answered for you. And of course, we do record this and all of our webinars. So if you want to watch this again, if you want to show it to somebody else in your organization, all you have to do is go to our website, which is innovia.com, and the recording will be posted by the end of today. So Brad, without further ado, I'll hand it right over to you.
Okay. Good morning. I understand we might have a little bit of a smaller group today. We're trying to use this webinar to build on one we did, I believe it was about a month ago, where we took a look at the NAV Eventing feature, technical feature that was released in NAV 2016. We wanted to do something targeting customers that may not be up to that version yet and are starting to think about a future upgrade, NAV 2016 or 2017 or potentially something later. Things that you might be able to do in your current environment today to get that environment ready to take advantage of some of the new technical features. So again, Abby introduced me, but my name is Brad Franz. I'm a senior development consultant with Innovia. I've been developing in Dynamics NAV since 2003. And I'm just showing on this slide here, I have some other non-NAV related work experience in that time as well. Abby, we make this presentation available to people that might want it following up on the webinar, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Super. I'm not going to spend too much more time on the introduction slide here. So here's an introduction. Again, if you participated in the January webinar, we explored what, for me, is compelling new, I'm saying newish, it's been out since NAV 2016, technical feature, specifically eventing in NAV. Today we're going to focus on the NAV organization running a customized pre-2016 version of NAV. Those versions are not event enabled. We're going to take a quick or make a quick review of the eventing feature. I'm going to discuss the impact that events have when we are coding in NAV 2016 or NAV 2017. We'll talk about the impact they have on our code structure and our customization strategy. And then we'll take a look at some opportunities for work that could be performed today to position the current non-event enabled environment for a future jump, again, to an event enabled version. 2016, currently 2017, hopefully later this year, NAV 2018, and so on. So what are events again? They are a technical feature providing the ability to execute custom business logic without the need to customize NAV source code. They're just cal functions with some new properties added or exposed. And we've got three key concepts when it comes to events. We have this concept of a publisher, we raise the event, and we have a subscriber. Publisher and subscriber are both, again, they're NAV functions, and we call the publisher in code. Again, I put this on here just to drive home a point. NAV events are a technical feature providing the ability to execute custom business logic without the need to customize NAV source code. Prior to events, when we wanted to create custom application behavior or code behavior, we had to literally customize source code. And that requirement is potentially removed, very often removed altogether when we're coding with events. I'll go through this slide, spend a minute here, and then we will jump into and take a look at these quickly again. One other comment I forgot in the introduction. This is a technical webinar. We are going to look at some code and some development tools. So if that's not your deal, or you don't believe you need to be here, just be forewarned. Why has Microsoft provided the eventing feature, or events? One key reason is that they've recognized much of the difficulty, the risk, and the expense of upgrade and application of cumulative updates is directly related to customization of NAV source code. When we modify the source code they provide, every time we want to apply a cumulative update and or do an upgrade, we have to maintain those customizations. Another reason for events or to use events, when we're using them, we're adopting a pattern, a development pattern, and a Microsoft recommended customization practice. So it's good practice to adopt this feature. Oh, here's this comment again. Technical feature providing the ability to customize or to execute custom business logic without the need to customize NAV source code. That's why, and I really just wanted to drive that home. All right, so let's jump into a NAV 2017 environment. We're going to take a look at some examples I've created. Again, just a review of what events are within the application, what they look like, how we configure these. I created a very simple code unit for the purpose of this webinar. I've got some custom code in the on-run trigger for this code unit, and I have added an event publisher. Now, how do I know that's an event publisher? I mentioned our publishers and our subscribers are just cal functions that we're accustomed to if we've been doing NAV development. I can create a publisher by defining a new NAV function. I define it. I set the event property to publisher. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I did alter this from the default value of business type to integration. If we wanted to see what that looks like in real time, if I wanted to create a new event publisher, create a new function. Actually, let's use the lookup. 3 options: no, publisher, or subscriber. No would just indicate to the NAV executable that this was a traditional function. I can select publisher here, and I mentioned we change that from business to integration. And now I have a new publisher. How we would call this publisher? Somewhere in code, we would type this line to raise our event. Just comment here, it's perfectly reasonable to define an event publisher and call it in code and have nothing happen when it's called. And in fact, in NAV 2016 and 2017, there are a couple of object types that define built-in triggers, specifically tables and pages, that are doing this all the time, whether we are subscribing to those events or not. I'm going to escape out of here and not save that. We'll take a look in this code unit where I am locating some event subscribers. Now, subscribers are a little more obvious. The function definition in the code window is indicating to us that this is an event subscriber. Excuse me. Similarly, if we wanted to subscribe to an event in the system, if we wanted to create a new event subscription, we would create a new function. In the event property, we'd define it as a subscriber. And now we would have to pick an object. Let's pick sales header. So in the event publisher, we're telling this function which object contains the events that it's subscribing to. And now here, we could pick which one. These trigger events, I mentioned pages and tables, when they're created, provide a set of events by default. Those are trigger events. We do not have the ability to define custom trigger events. But we can see the sales header table is also exposing 4 integration events. These have also been provided by Microsoft, but they are not built in. A developer has literally defined these. So let's assume we wanted to subscribe to the on after delete event associated with the sales header table. We would pick that trigger event, close out of here, and there is our new subscriber. We could add code here. We could make calls out to other objects from this subscribing function. Key thing to realize is this event now always responds to the deletion of a sales header record. Anytime we delete a sales header record, whatever code we had in here would execute. So that could just be a message. Something like that. Anytime and every time sales header record, one record is deleted, this subscriber would execute. And notice we didn't add any code to the sales header table itself. We're going to escape out of there. I wanted to take a look at a common customization request and how we would go about that in an event-enabled environment. And a little later in the presentation, we will compare this. We'll take a look at how that's traditionally been done versus how we would do this today. And again, after that, we will get to what we could do with an existing customization that had been done the old way. Do we have an opportunity to move towards the new way, in spite of the fact we don't have access to events? So the scenario is, when I add a custom field to the customer table, when we're creating a sales order, we want that new custom field passed to the sales order. And additionally, when a sales order is released, we want to ensure that new custom field is not blank. It has to have a value in order for us to release the sales order. We're going to jump back into our 2017 development environment. I've done some pre-work to get these objects ready. We'll take a look at the customer table. And I added a new code field called Brad code field. Imagine that. There was no logic behind it. It's just a value that we could provide. I did show that field on the customer card. We'll see that in a moment. Additionally, we said we want that value passed to the sales header table. I've added the field there. I've also shown it on the sales order page. And lastly, we said on release of an order, the field must contain a value. We'll get to that in a moment. So let's take a look at our role-tailored client. Just doing some basic testing with SportsMyers. There is our new field on the customer. I'm going to create a new sales order. And there we can see our new field was populated. Let's take a look at how that happened, or how it should have happened. At this point, the only thing I've shown is two new fields added to two existing tables. Okay, so I fibbed to you about where that's happening. That's still happening the old way. We need to comment that out. That's how we traditionally would have done this. That's expected. So if I create a new sales order now with that code commented out, we commented out the old mod. My field does not get passed here. We're going to enable our event subscriber code. I'm going to delete this. Create a new sales order. And now when I do that, our new field has passed again. That is happening because this function has been configured as an event subscriber. And it's responding to the on-after validate event for the sell to customer number field in the sales header table. Every time we validate sell to customer number, a trigger event fires, and I'm able to subscribe to it. I get a reference to the sales header record that is being worked with, and from there, I can go get my customer, pull that new custom field from the customer record, and assign it to the sales header field. Again, the significance of this new way of doing this, I have added a custom field to 2 tables, but I have not touched the source code. From an upgrade perspective, that is significant. Not very difficult to move fields between versions. The time associated with upgrade or cumulative update application is incurred when we're having to port the code that's in the object. I've just passed a new custom field without adding any code to base nav objects. We said we needed to be able to make sure this code had a value on release. So let me clear that out and release this order. And I've got the debugger running because I want. Okay, again, I need to revert an old change that we'll be looking at shortly. I'm expecting an error. Okay, this tells me my event is not firing. This is a base nav check. There are no lines on this order. So we would expect to get that error message, but that code is after when my check should be executing. We did not get our error message because I had this commented out. One more time, we'll try to release this. And that is the error message we are expecting. We're testing the new custom field to simply have a value at the time of release. I'll run this one more time and spend a minute longer in the debugger, just so we can confirm. Debugger shows us that we're breaking on an error message, and we can see that we're in code unit 50006, webinar 2 event management. We have this event subscriber that's simply doing a test field on whatever this variable is. Sender is a reference to sales header in this case. Let's take a look at the definition or the configuration for that subscribing function. So again, we had added this function. We said it subscribes. Now, interestingly, it's not subscribing to an event. In code unit 414, the release management, as I dug into 2017 source code, I recognized what Microsoft does now in that code unit. They've added a publishing event in the sales header table called onCheck sales release restrictions. So I was able to subscribe to that, and every time we attempt to release a sales document, our subscribing code will execute. Now, just two things to call out here. So the new way of doing this, this typical, let's go look at our customization scenario again. This is relatively representative of requests we frequently get. Add a custom field to a master record, pass it to a document, check for something on release of that document. It could be something at the time of posting. We were able to create this modification in NAV 2017, where the only impact on base NAV objects involved adding fields to the tables. And I mentioned previously that's relatively low impact. All the code associated with this customization scenario lives outside of Microsoft's source code. So we looked at the new way. Let's take a look at what this modification probably looks like the old way. And we saw some of that already as I was commenting and uncommenting some code. On a pre-event enabled environment, when this request came in, a developer likely went into the NAV object, the Microsoft provided object, and they found just the right spot in the onValidate trigger for that field. And they added the code there. That transferred the value from our customer record to the sales header record. And then the developer also went, more than likely, into the sales release management code unit. And again, they found just the right spot where it made the most sense to perform this test field. We could see that in Microsoft source code, they're already doing a test field and a header value here, so we kind of found the end of the block where they were performing that activity, and we added our new code there. And this scenario is relatively simple, admittedly, but the downside with this approach, the old way, is that every time I want to inherit, if you will, updates from Microsoft, I have to maintain this modification, this line of code. I have to continuously reincorporate this mod into the changes coming from Microsoft. And similarly, this one. I'm always dealing with that. Every time I want to apply a cumulative update, which I release monthly now, or a major NAV release. Those are annual now for several years. Again, a simple scenario, but multiply this times the number of customizations in a typical NAV environment, and you start to understand why application of upgrades and cumulative updates can take a long time. All right, so before we get into what we can do in the current environment, let's talk about what we should do. So my environment is pre-2016. I don't have access to these events. What can I do? Well, first thing, you can research and understand. We can do exactly what we're doing today. Attend a webinar. Get online, look at Microsoft documentation. Documentation that's being provided by NAV MVPs. And understand these new technical features and the application features that are available in the latest NAV versions. We can look into and really understand the customization that's in our current environment. With an understanding of both of these things, We start to identify opportunities to replace customization with base nav functionality. Maybe we anticipate or we can flag particular customizations that we can just walk away from if and when we get ready for upgrade. Again, with understanding of the current state of nav as well as the customization in my current environment, I can also start to identify opportunities to reduce source code customization via refactoring. So what is this refactoring thing? I pulled this from Wikipedia. This is just the top portion. I encourage everybody to take a look at that article. It's got a very nice description of what refactoring is, what we're trying to accomplish. But it's in a nutshell, it's the process of restructuring existing computer code without changing the external behavior of that code. We change it within the NAV objects, but from an end user's perspective, there's no difference in how the customization works. Strategies for refactoring. It's less a thing that we can say is going to take X amount of time, and we can start it on this date and finish it on this other date. It's a process. It's something we want to perform in iterative, small increments. Again, the idea is to improve or rework our customized code without altering external functionality. We don't want the end user
Brad, I'm not hearing you right now. I'm wondering if maybe we just lost your microphone or if you're on mute. We'll give Brad just a minute here to fix that technical difficulty. While he's doing that, I just want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, type them into that question bar. We will get them called out and answered for you. And of course, we are recording the webinar. It's going to be up on the website by the end of the day. Again, we're just waiting here to give Brad a moment to get his microphone back online. It looks like he may have lost his connectivity, so we do apologize for that. I'm sure he's working on it right now to get himself back online. Just a reminder, this is the second webinar in this series. You can view the recording of the first of this series on our website, which is innovia.com. So we can see Brad's mouse moving now, which is great, but we still can't hear him.
Can you hear me now, Abby?
There we go. There you are, Brad. We sure can.
Apologies, everybody. I lost my VPN connection, and whenever that happens, my whole internet connection recycles or cycles. Abby, did we have any questions, or can I jump right back in?
So far, no questions, Brad. Go right ahead.
Okay. I think at the point you lost me, we were talking about refactoring strategies. We'll start from the beginning of this slide. So we're going to try and rework our existing customization. We want to do that in small increments. Refactoring is best when approached as a process. Our goal is to improve our code, reduce our footprint on base nav source code without changing the experience the end user is having. We don't want them to know anything has changed behind the scenes. So the way we go about doing that, traditionally, we would think about customizations in NAV as an entire mod. We have a modification request that potentially is going to involve several objects. But when it comes to refactoring, we want to think and work on individual customization in an object. We don't need to try to rework the entire modification in one fell swoop. What that process looks like, we refactor one customization. We're going to want to test and validate our change and then repeat with other customizations and work through our set of customized objects in NAV. Where do we focus? So this is not NAV specific, but in terms of refactoring strategies, we want to focus our efforts in areas where new tools and options are or will be available. For the purpose of this webinar, we know at some point in our environment this event concept becomes available. We'll touch on this, I think, in a future webinar, but custom layouts and reports are another opportunity for us to reduce our level of customization in our environment. We also probably want to focus in areas we know we've customized extensively. When it comes time to upgrade, highly modified areas of the application are probably where the bulk of the code merge effort is going to occur. And we also want to take a look in areas that we know Microsoft is actively refactoring. We may not have extensive customization in an area, but if Microsoft has made major changes to a particular object, there again, that object has the potential to cause us grief when it's time to upgrade. So let's take a look at that previous example. We're going to look at a way that we could refactor that old way modification into something a little bit closer to what we would like to do in the event-enabled version. So let me get out of all of my open objects. I'm going to comment this stuff out just so that we can see our refactoring work. I'm going to re-enable that. And I'm going to re-enable this code. The reason I did that, right now we should have an old way modification back in place. If I do a new sales order, I'm expecting we're going to see test code in our new custom code field. There it is. That's coming from the old way modification. If I delete that value and attempt to release, I'm expecting we'll see an error message. And the error message is coming from our, again, our old way modification. Right now we are in code unit 414. I don't think we can see that very well. We're in the sales release sales document code unit, throwing an error message. And that is the part that we're going to tackle here. How would we refactor that thing? Well, the example I put together, we understand what the 2017 version of this code unit looks like. We've been able to take a look at it. We understand Microsoft they've added the event feature, and in addition to that, they are providing some built-in integration events in areas that are strategic. Microsoft is aware that this is an area, and this is a modification that is relatively common. We want to eliminate this. Not the functionality, but this specific customization from this code unit. So what I did, I don't have events available to me, or that's our assumption here. What I can do is apply what is called a hook pattern. The hook pattern resembles in many ways what is actually happening in events. So we'll take a look at this code unit in just a moment. But in an effort to position myself, I can't literally get rid of all of the customization in this object. But what I can do is position the customization to be removed altogether when I am able to make a jump to NAV 2016 or 2017. So I want to comment this out. We've replaced that code with this call up here. The pre-2016 event management code unit and this function. I need to show that object. So in this object, I've added a global function, CU414 underscore oncheck sales release restrictions publisher. Mentioned it was global. And similar to the way the event publisher and subscriber would behave, I added a parameter, a reference parameter, to an instance of a sales header record. So essentially here I'm modeling my future event publisher. I've added a second function, a local, that's called in this global. So code unit 414 is going to call this function. This function in turn is going to call my local here. And we're just performing the test field here. How this structure is significant, when I get to a version that is event enabled, I would have the ability to change the signature. I'd be able to convert my new function that's performing the test field to subscriber. So we've used our understanding of the changes Microsoft has been making to rework a customization modeled using a pattern that models the event behavior such that, again, when we go through our upgrade to NAV 2017, we're in a position to change the signature of this function. We actually would end up deleting this one. And again, post-upgrade, we would be able to delete this and all of this stuff. Our code unit would be back to the state it was provided by Microsoft, and yet we would still have our custom application behavior. Whoop. I had one other a real-world example I wanted to take a look at. For that, we're going to jump into this database. And we can see this is a code base that was originally being developed prior to NAV 2016. So we have some old way customizations in here. We replaced this code from Microsoft with this customization, and really the customization was this behavior here. We could rework this modification today. What it would look like were we to do that. Whoops. No, I'll just create a new one. We were in the item table. And specifically, we were in the one of the field validate triggers. For sake of argument, I'm going to assume we were in the number field. Nope, apologize. We were in the vendor number. Vendor number field. Basically, to refactor that modification, we would take the customization, we would move it into an event subscriber. We could refactor in a pre-2016 environment, again, using the hook pattern. We could create a global function that was callable from the onValidate trigger And then from within that global function, we could call our stubbed event subscriber here. So why this concept matters. I'm running a little bit long on time here. I want to quickly show you, we did this in the last webinar. I'm going to show you a text comparison of code unit 80, which is a sales post code unit. The left side of the window here is NAV 2016. The right side of the window is code unit 80 in NAV 2017. All of this red on the left side represents change that Microsoft has made to this object. Right here we can see that we're looking at, in the top section, the on-run trigger for the code unit. There's significant differences simply in the variables that they're defining in the code unit. And as we continue to scroll down, you can see in 2017, Microsoft has refactored or moved all of this code. This block of code that we're looking at here is a common area of customization. We can see none of this. In one major release from Microsoft, all of this code has been relocated elsewhere. So if we had customization, and again, many traditional NAV environments would have customization in this block of code, a developer is going to have to figure out not only if the customization works in the same way in the new version, but where it would have to be moved to. If we can take a look at that ahead of time and potentially rework some of those customizations, we can reduce the amount of developer effort during the upgrade. Same summary as the last webinar. There's a lot here to learn and think about. These new technical features, events in particular, custom layouts for reports, other application features as well. They're adding features that help us help ourselves. We need to realize Microsoft is aggressively refactoring their own code. That's going to create pressure on us during upgrades. Going to force us, in some cases, to rework existing customization. Events really are our key to providing customized business logic or customized user experience without customizing the source code. And minimizing our customization of source code is our key for reducing risk and effort and expense associated with upgrades. Questions?
Sorry about that, Brad. I had my mute on and I didn't realize it. We do have just a couple of questions here. Our first one, this seems like a lot of information. Where would I even start in terms of getting my not event-enabled NAV environment ready for a future upgrade?
Yep. I would go back to this slide. How would I go about getting it ready? I would start by learning. Learn all that you can about the current version of NAV and what is available and in there. If you can get a Cronus environment, a demo database environment in place that you could work with and really get to understanding. That's an ideal starting place. And then again, really developing an understanding of what have I customized in my current environment. Is it all truly necessary? Identify the set of that customization. Get familiar with it. Identify the customization that I know I will need to bring forward so that I can focus on that work.
Okay, great. Our next question, can Innovia help me with a refactoring effort in my current environment?
Absolutely. We could help by literally performing work. We could help consulting, in a consulting capacity, helping to create an understanding of what has been customized for a customer that potentially has their own development resources on staff. What that could look like. Right, so in this environment, we're just looking at code unit objects. We've set some simple filters to identify objects that are indicating they've been modified. Right, we could provide some comparison on these objects as well. I showed a text compare of two base NAV objects here. When we are doing an upgrade, a part of that process involves doing a comparison, for example, between the company initialized code unit and the original version of that code unit. So as a developer, I can understand what has been added, removed, or changed from this object. Maybe I was kind of long-winded there, but...
Okay, I think that's awesome, Brad. Our last question, how long does it take to refactor customizations?
Good question. It depends is the answer. This one doesn't have a black and white answer. It depends on the level of customization in an object and how we go about doing it. I want to go back to another slide. It doesn't take long to refactor small bits of code. If we think about the refactoring effort as something we perform on an object-by-object basis, if we picked on format address here, how long would it take to refactor the customization in this object? Hard to say exactly. Let's design it and look at what is custom in the code unit. Looks like we did something in here. We would spend a few minutes looking at this customization to understand, is it something I can easily refactor? If we assumed it was, it really probably doesn't take a long time to decide what are we going to do with this. If we identify this customization as being a candidate to be reworked via the hook pattern, we need a hook management code unit. We need to add a global function that we can call from within this code unit, and we probably need to add a local function in the hook management code unit that will actually replace our customization. Probably about an hour per, realistically, probably about an hour per object for a normally customized code unit object or a table. If we look at this one, it looks like that's the only customization in this object. It's very likely we would have our refactoring done, tested, potentially deployed in an hour or less.
Okay, well, Brad, that is the end of our questions. I do want to remind everybody that we will have our recording of this webinar up by the end of the day on our website, which is innovia.com. And I just want to thank everybody for attending our our webinar today, and we hope to see you on our next one.
Thank you very much.